Sasha, I have gathered the most popular questions about spiritual energy practices that people usually ask. Some questions might seem absurd or, I don't know, irrelevant to you, but this is what people are interested in, what they ask, and I would like to go through them and get your opinion.
Let's begin. Can you harm yourself by doing spiritual energy practices?
When we approach the question of spiritual energy practices, it's as broad a concept as saying, can you build a house for $1? You can. By drawing it on a piece of paper, there is a house drawn on a piece of paper. There is a house made of clay or Lego, and there is a skyscraper, 100 floors high. So there is a big difference between the house. Similarly, there is a big difference between what a person in the modern world understands as spiritual energy practices. Accordingly, are there aspects where a person might encounter some harm? Probably there is, because today people fantasize about what spirituality is. If we consider spiritual practices as components of the material world, then there is the material world, and within it there are spiritual practices. If you look at spiritual practices this way, clearly there are certain practices that can be harmful. Because, for example, people take certain substances, claiming it's a spiritual practice. Because 3,000 years ago, someone used that substance. If we consider spiritual practices from the aspect that there is a spiritual world, and within it there is the material, then we must always understand that there is something beyond the awareness of the material world and uncontrolled processes that people do not manage. Therefore, in these processes, one can indeed enter a state of some harm. Here, the important aspect is whether you understand, first of all, what foundation you are basing your concentration on regarding spiritual practices. And second, do you understand what happens during this spiritual practice? Also, everything can be harmed. What is a spiritual practice? If we say there is a spiritual world, within it there is a material world, then even our current conversation is a spiritual practice because it is an experience. But if we kind of move on, someone might say, well, okay, but let's move on to some specific constructs. I don't know, a person sits in meditation, and in meditation, when a person was sitting at lunch and then, poof, switched off for 10 minutes and then switched back on. Is this meditation or not? Or can there be no meditation during lunch? Can meditation only be in a special room? Or if a person went into a store and saw something, or they went into a cave and saw something, as if it can't be in a store, but it definitely can be in a cave. Or if some other person touched him and his whole body was filled with some energy. Or if a family member or a friend touched him, that can't be. But if the Dalai Lama touched him, then that can be. So what exactly should happen? What do we mean by this? And what is it? Everywhere. A person can harm themselves everywhere. Absolutely in everything. Can a person harm themselves by opening the refrigerator? Well, they definitely can. Pull the refrigerator onto yourself somehow, it will crush you. Well, there are many things. Can you harm yourself, leech cat? Well, of course you can choke, for example, die, right? Or bite off a piece of a glass. Probably you can. Well, that's why there's also a wide range there.
Thank you. So the third eye, does this third eye exist? How can it be opened? Is it possible to open it? I mean, this is a popular topic, a topic among people in esotericism, right? When you talk about the Ajna area in the center of the forehead, which is responsible for clairvoyance and intuition. There are many courses available online on how in 7 days inside the yes, the third eye, right? And I think this is where people's fears come from. Is it dangerous? Will it drive you crazy? And so on. So what do you think about the third eye?
First of all, I want to say that when we discuss things like the third eye, we need to first look at why we want to do this. If we want to do this for expansion, a person wants to do it, for example, for expanding vision, as you said, or for a broader perception of everything, we need to look. What influences vision? Is vision only the third eye or something else? Well, at least ask yourself this question, just ask this question. Or is the third eye a vision of what, and specifically what? For this, look, when we ask such a question, for this it becomes, you've also heard a lot about the third eye, right? So it's a common question, but you too. Well, you're popular on YouTube, but you've also heard about it. Ask the question, what is this really? What is this structure? How is it organized? What are its pros and cons? What are the consequences of this? Because it's like starting to see with eyes as a positive action. Positive. But if a person does not see and does not understand what it is and is given something to see, they might They might see things they are not ready for. Well, for example, you live nearby, together in an apartment. It's unlikely that there's a drug den in the apartment or that people are constantly being assaulted in the apartment next door. You don't know about this. You walk there, the apartment owners greet you. How are you? How's it going? What did they do there? Well, I mean a good relationship, but as soon as you find out that it's a drug den or that people are being assaulted there, not only will you stop greeting them, you'll even be afraid to pass by. You will develop a certain negative attitude towards it. So if you want to expand your vision, you should not focus on the third eye question, but rather on why you want to gain expanded vision at all. You must understand that you will begin to see certain ranges which, even if you look practically, about which you do not know. There is a very strong rule in spiritual science, which states the following: the more you see from the perspective of the spiritual world, the less you need to fear. You cannot be afraid in the spiritual worlds, because if you delve deeply into spiritual perception, I am now talking about spiritual perception in the understanding that there is a spiritual world, there is an intramaterial world as a part of the spiritual world. Yes, it's just a component. At the same time, I am talking about perceiving what a person is basically considered not to perceive. You must understand that you will start seeing things for which you need to be prepared. In particular, are you sure you want to see to the end what will happen, for example, with your children or with you, from the perspective of life? You will inevitably face death. And then the question is, will you like or dislike that age, for example, or the process of dying, or the details of living through it? Are you sure you want to learn about all these details now, for example? This is one side of observation. The other side of observation, which exists in general, needs to be considered and studied as a given, is how a person truly develops in terms of their perception. And the expansion of perception is really just the expansion of the third eye and some kind of clairvoyant knowledge. Or the expansion of perception is recognizing oneself and connecting with oneself more and more. What is the basic difference? The difference in the direction of movement. Basically, a person says, there is a material world, and within it there is a spiritual one. Or there is a material world, there is some kind of spiritual, but in reality it is still material, the main one. And a person wants to get something that will look into this spiritual world or look at something from the side. Basically, a person says, right? And thus, when a person gets this, they say, I become stronger in the material world. There is another structure, which is important to consider. There is a spiritual world, inside there is a material world. And in the spiritual world, you are a spiritual being, and you are now perceiving a part not just of the spiritual world, but a part of yourself, a spiritual being. The task is not to start seeing more or knowing more as a person, like Alexander Volchek or Anya Gurina. The task is for a person to connect with themselves and to know themselves by connecting with themselves. You have already connected with yourself. You are an incredible spiritual being. Every person is a large spiritual structure. But what is the difference? In this construct where you connect with yourself, there is no development of yourself as a personality, like Alexander Volchek. There is a connection with one's spiritual being to understand how my spiritual being develops. These are different things. By connecting with my spiritual being, my perception will automatically expand, because otherwise I won't be able to perceive it. Logically, the automatic expansion of perception will broaden my perception regarding everything that is happening. Perception in this case, I mean including all different forms of intuition, inspiration, imagination, clairvoyance, different forms of various perceptions, color, images, different forms, thoughts, visions, knowledge, hearing, understanding, holding different worlds, temporal, timeless, a lot of things. But not to build up my personality, to have the ability to read the future, to buy the right stocks, yes, or to buy the right business. Well, usually, why do people want to read the future? Well, why? What would you want to do after reading the future? But you probably wouldn't want to know your child's fate. As soon as I start telling you different things about your child's fate, you'll say, Sasha, I don't need to know about this. Because you will have to live with it. Your perception, feelings, your current feeling, how you will live with it will be very specific in terms of knowledge. A basic person wants to know certain things. Moreover, he wants to know good things, you see. He doesn't just want to know, he wants to know how to buy stocks for himself and win with it. He doesn't want to know if he will be bankrupt in the future or if he will make money. He says, you will be bankrupt. He says, no, you found out something wrong. Can I have the next one? And they tell him, you will be bankrupt. He says, can I have the next one? You will be bankrupt? You will be bankrupt. That is, it's very, very hard to deal with this. Very hard. Or like, your children will die before you. Good information. Well, it's specific, right? And off it goes. Or you might get a certain illness, be in a coma for 10 years, or feel increasingly unhappy. What do you want to know? Do you want to know events or your own experiences? What's the difference? All these parameters around, number of children, wife, husband, deaths, amount of money in the account, number of trips. The essence is how you feel at this moment in time. Do you feel fulfilled, joyful, happy, whole, harmonious? Or do you feel fearful at this moment in time?
What's the difference? Maybe you've earned money, but at the same time, you have the feeling that you'll lose this money, that it will be stolen from you, or you have 867 ships or anything at all. What's the difference? What do you want to know? Do you want to write the entire complex A in your head using this third eye? Do you understand the number of consistent details you'll have to learn? You'll be learning them endlessly. And at this moment, what's happening with this, and here, what's happening, and here, and here, and here.
And here? And look, there is not enough time to find out. You will never see the whole picture. Because in order to see the whole picture, you will have to spend, if you want to see the whole picture of 20 years, you will have to spend 20 years on it to see the whole picture. And when will you live? And to perceive 20 years at once and know them simultaneously, that is a different perception. To simply know, you say, I just know. They tell you, but you haven't lived those 20 years. But I know. That is a different perception. Here, the question is what a person sees in this. Usually, everything related to the third eye involves a huge amount, an insane amount of manipulations, just an incredible amount of manipulations. Indeed, there are certain areas of the body that express certain structures, states. But you can press on them, direct energy, lasers, you can do anything with them. But for you, the situation might only get worse, not better. And at the same time, there are a huge number of people who did nothing, and they perceive both the past and the future, did nothing. They don't even talk about it at all, they don't even mention it. A person always needs some kind of cool energy or support that they don't understand. I'll just tell you, you've heard a lot about the third eye. Tell me the structure and nature of this. How did it work before? What and in what? What is the structure? What is the nature of this? How does it work? But you will immediately say, I don't know anything about this, nothing. Well, sort of. So what? What is it? Is it an organ or an energetic organ? In what structure of the body is it located? In the physical, in the etheric body. Are you stimulating some physical component or etheric or astral, or not awakening anything at all, building some line? What exactly is happening? And everyone has it, either it is always asleep or not asleep, or partially awakened or fully awakened. And what if fully? Then is there a state 0-1? What is there? Vision isn't 0-1, is it? Vision has different states, completely different. Well, there seems to be 0 from the perspective of a blind person. You can also look at it from the perspective that the person still perceives other things. But then there are different types of vision, some different type of vision. Well, what different type of vision? What does it mean when someone says, I have opened my third eye? It means there is a difference in perception. There is color, there is black and white, and there is how they see. If we know that they see differently, I don't know, animals or birds or something else. Humans also have different aspects of perception. Or someone sees only the future or the past. And if you saw it, can you do something or not? Can you change what you saw? And if what you saw didn't come to life, didn't affect you in any other way? Well, this is important. A person wants fairy tales and incredible things without considering what is. And once again, this is the material world, and within it, the spiritual. It is 99.9999999% of the spiritual world. That's what you will find in the description of what the spiritual world is. Understood. Is there really multiverse? Well, of course, where did this concept come from? Well, the very concept of the multiverse is much more serious than the concept of the multiverse, than the concept of the multiverse that is described, that a person can only imagine, that a person can only imagine. Well, obviously there are things that the human brain simply cannot digest. If it could digest everything, well, then some scientific evidence comes along, something is shown, some flashes. Then in the sky they say, we saw some flash in space, or saw a new black hole, or saw some new pattern, or saw something else. And a computer can draw some kind of model, it can draw some model somewhere. And 40 years ago it couldn't draw, but now it can draw such a model. But everything is much more complicated. Everything is much more complicated. Again, if look, the spiritual world were part of the material, and everything could be described by the laws of physics, then everything would already be described. It's very simple. Everything would already be described. But this was described as, then they said, 100 years ago people were idiots, and now we've become smarter. Well, wait, 100 years. Wait 100 years and see. You don't even need to wait 100 years. Let's look in 2025 how 30-year-old people, 30-year-old scientists or 40-year-olds will reason about the 2000s or about 1980 or 1900. Look! Just the 50s, merely the 50s. I'm not even talking about the 90s or the year 2150. Wait, see how they will reason about them? What they will say about doctors, what doctors have, how they relate to them? When we look at doctors from 150 years ago, we say, well, they were idiots back then. Medicine now is impressive. But if we look realistically, the probability of error is catastrophically high, and a huge number of things remain completely unknown. Indeed, many things have improved. Question, why? Who was the reason for the improvement of many things? Why did a certain person gain this knowledge at this moment, but not 300 years ago? Why did it happen this way? We say there are genes, there are ancestral programs. So why didn't he use this gene 300 years ago, and this ancestral program, and realize it? He says, I'm just that smart.